Well, for more insight on the Israeli war on Gaza, we're now joined by historian and social activist Olsi Jazeshi joining us from Kuala Lumpur. Also, we have activist and commentator Don DeBar joining us from Austin, New York. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. Let's start off with our guest in Kuala Lumpur and looking at the fallout from the Israeli war, specifically with how it's spreading online. Many are pointing to the fact that this propaganda of justifying this assault and this murderous, maniacal attacks against the Palestinians in Gaza by the Israelis has failed. Do you see it in that as well, Mr. Jazeshi?
Yes, indeed. Israel in this moment is facing a global campaign against its regime, where people from all the corners of our planet they are protesting against Israeli barbarity. The Americans and the Europeans who support this settler colonialist regime, they find themselves in a very difficult situation because nowadays from Washington to Jakarta, all humanity is protesting against Israeli barbarity. Israel has lost its war. It has lost its propagandistic war, whereby it tries to portray itself as a victim. And on the other hand, it has lost even its war against Hamas, even though Israel has massacred and turned Gaza into a rubble and is massacring and killing people worse than Hitler was massacring Jews during Second World War. Still, Israel has failed to destroy Hamas, and because of the crimes that it is doing, it will produce more Hamas followers than it had faced on October 7th.
Same question to our guest in New York, Don DeBar. What do you make of this? Well, first of all, it's the Israelis portraying their narrative as they're the victims in all of this. And then we fast forward to today where 11,000, at least 11,500 Palestinians have been killed. Half of those are women and children. The Gaza Strip has basically been reduced to rubble. They are the occupying force. How can the occupying force be the victim?
Yeah. How can the force that is conducting a bombing, saturation bombing in essence, of a civilian population be the victim? And the answer is that they can't be the victim. The answer is that it's propaganda. Look, we're living in like a double cloud looking at this thing. It's the fog of war on the one hand and the fog of propaganda, and a colloquial term for cow excrement on the other. And we're facing a situation where, a people are being exterminated. There's no other word for it. Genocide is actually a gentle term for what's happening. The murder of babies and women is intended to forestall the possibility of Palestinians in Gaza reproducing. The driving of them from the land, first the northern half, and then when everyone is gathered, everyone that's left is gathered in the second part, they're being told to get out of there too. That is very clear that this is a ethnic cleansing of that land, and again with the attacks on the various refugee areas in both the north and the south that have taken place, it's clear that it's an extermination that's intended. You have a situation that's being demonstrated across the world for the value that it has of marches against this war by people around the world. One thing that it does do is clear the fog on the question of how the people of the world feel, even though the governments are supporting, the Western governments are supporting Israel in this extermination of the Palestinian people. The people of the world are standing against it. The problem is that the actualization of this opposition to the murder is operating on a much longer curve than the time necessary to continue and complete the extermination. And in any event, even if it's half completed, it's an atrocity. It's unparalleled in history, certainly over the last 150 to 200 years, including the period in Germany from 1939 until 1945, as ugly as that was. We have a problem here in that we have no mechanism for working out a solution. When you have a huge vector between the governments and the people, the only way to resolve that generally is for the people to change the governments. The process of doing that by elections puts that off in the United States as if there were a choice on the matter on the ballot anyway until November of last year. Likewise, in Europe, there's nothing on the agenda in the immediate sense, and the people are going to be, forced to watch the extermination of the people in Gaza and wherever else that goes. Israel, by the way, is also bombing outside Damascus in the last day or so. There is a wider war fear among everyone in the region that is keeping them from, participating in this and trying, in military defense of the people of Gaza. On the other hand, the wider war is being conducted already by Israel. So there's a lot of things in front of the people that put on the agenda the necessity of the people doing something that spares the lives of these people that are being murdered. And to me, it seems like they have to figure out how to change their governments.
Mr. Gizeshi, an interesting point brought up by our guest, Don DeBar. He said what's missing right now is a mechanism to resolve the situation. We already know that the United Nations and the Security Council, they've failed to properly intervene. Just a few days ago, the first resolution that was passed by the Security Council was calling for something like a humanitarian pause. As many experts have said, the notion of a humanitarian pause is ridiculous in itself. What is a humanitarian pause? They want to stop bombing, get aid in, and then continue the bombing after the pause is over. So I want you to elaborate on that point that was brought up by Mr. Don DeBar for us. What is the proper mechanism now to resolve this situation?
Well, I mean, the issue of Israeli crimes and the Zionist crimes against the humanity didn't start today. It started in 1917 when the British, they defeated the Ottomans, and they decided to invent this evil colony that we know nowadays as Israel. I mean, if we see the history of the creation of Israel since World War I, when the British, they defeated the Ottomans, and they implanted the Zionist Jews who were brought from Eastern Europe. I mean, from the very inception, Israel has been created over a crime. So, I mean, look, it is the world order which the British and the Americans, they built during World War I, and then after World War II, they did the same, and they turned Israel somehow into a country that is untouchable by international law. Unfortunately, after the fall of the Soviet Union, because when Soviet Union was around, the Zionists, they were not as arrogant as they are today. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union and the creation of the New World Order by the Americans, and the wars that the Americans started in the Middle East with the destruction of Iraq, of Syria, of Libya, of Yemen, of Sudan, Israel has been the main engine which has driven the American or Anglo-American imperialism against the Muslim world. What Israel is doing in this very moment in Gaza is the same thing that we have seen during the past 3 decades happening against Baghdad, against Tripoli. In this very moment that we're speaking, I mean, Israel is not waging war only against Palestine and Gaza. It is waging war against Syria, is waging war against Lebanon, is waging war against all Arab countries, and Iran in particular. Israel is a state that has been created, or like Joe Biden has said, if Israel was not to exist, we will have to invent it. It is a country that serves as the worship of American imperialism in the Middle East in order to destroy the world of Islam. And unfortunately, this state, which is run by a medieval theocratic ideology of Zionism, where its leaders like Benjamin Netanyahu, they perceive the Palestinians as being the biblical enemies of the Israelis, of the Hebrews, the infamous Amalek. This is a genocidal regime. And I believe the only way how humanity can stop what Israel is doing is the creation of a new world order, but these new world orders usually come after a major world war. And unfortunately, I mean, since after World War I, and then after World War II, and after the collapse of the Soviet Union, Israel was always there to kill, to massacre Muslims and Christians of the Middle East. It is such a shame for the Western civilization and the Anglo-Americans in particular, which have invented this monster, which support this monster until this very moment.
Let's get a final thought in from Don DeBar. Sir, when we're looking at the demonstrations that are taking place in support of Palestine, specifically when we're looking to Europe, there's a certain hypocrisy from these European governments, from at least some of them, where it's okay to burn the Holy Quran, but if you were to burn an Israeli flag, that would be a serious offense. You would be arrested, you would be charged. Can you explain that hypocrisy for us?
No, it doesn't make any sense. These things that get passed and are on the books and are enforced against an individual here or there, sort of out of the main view, that they come into being for pandering to one or another group. And certainly the Israel lobby in Europe is very potent, as it is potent also in the United States. In terms of placing candidates in office, they have a lot of levers, more than most lobbyists, as a matter of fact, just in terms of what's expressed. However, looking at the protests, for example, what's been happening over the last decades in Europe and the United States, and also Japan, South Korea, Australia, and some other places, has been, in essence, an education by reality of the population, first suffering through austerity, rollback of the various protections for the people, the safety nets, etc., the rollback of civil liberties, the clampdown on communications, and the increased debt load, loss of housing, increase in homelessness, difficulties with healthcare, etc. These things have happened in stages that have shown the vector between reality and what politicians say, and have created a vector between what the people want and what the politicians are doing, and made it and illustrated for people. This thing that's happening now, this blatant massacre of human beings that's happening on television in front of the world, now is being viewed in the context of all of the lies and all of the hostile acts that have been taken against the people for the last 40 or 50 years. And I think it's going to put energy into the populations, and with a recognition that what they're looking at is something that can't be fixed and that needs to be tossed out and something new put in its place. And you're going to start seeing that bubble in different places, from Western Europe to Saudi Arabia and elsewhere, I think, pretty soon, actually. And as a matter of fact, again, I'll make the point, if some change doesn't happen somewhere very soon, then we're going to watch almost the complete extinction of the people who are being murdered with impunity right now by Israel and the United States.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen. Olsi Jazeshi joining us from Kuala Lumpur, and Don DeBar speaking to us from Al-Sinning in New York. Thank you for contributing to this segment of the program.